Hello, Mike Herms, Palmer Johnson Power Systems. Today discussing twin disc power takeoffs, or PTOs for short. They come in three basic models, the CX106 through the CX111, the SP111, which goes all the way up to an SP321, and then the IBFs, which come in an IBF 214 all the way up to an IBF 321. The SP111 PTO is a single friction disc, 11-inch in diameter, with an SAE number 3 housing. The housing and bearing carrier are integrated. The clutch pack sits on the front of the main shaft and is retained with a nut and lock washer. The clutch pack locks the engine to the PTO through the clutch plate and the two steel clutch plates. The clutch is released and engaged by the hand lever, which is attached to the operating shaft, and the clutch release fork, which engages the sliding sleeve assembly. The housing of the PTO will have an ID tag bolted to it. This is the handhold cover, and when removed, gives you access to adjust the clutch. This is the ID tag. There's one of these on every twin disc PTO. All your information on this PTO will be stamped into this cover plate. The bill of material will be stamped here under BOM number, sometimes referred to as a spec number. The model information will be stamped in this line under model number, and the serial number of the unit will be stamped here. This blank box sometimes will be used for customer specific. If the PTO was sold specifically for Mobark, it may contain their part number. The lower set of boxes here will tell you the amount of foot-pounds of torque required to lock the clutch in and the length of the hand lever in inches. It'll also give you the specs in Newton meters as well. At the bottom of the tag, it points out all the grease locations and how often they should be greased, along with the spec for the grease to be used. The PTO, or the pilot nub, the pilot bearing would be installed on there. That is tapped on till flush with the end of the shaft, and the pilot bearing engages the flywheel pilot bearing bore. The other component on the PTO is the driving ring, and the driving ring is bolted to the engine flywheel, and it will engage the teeth on the clutch plate of the PTO. That's how the power is transmitted from the engine through the clutch and out the PTO. Here we have the handhold cover or spec tag removed from the PTO to kind of give a little bit of visual of the components inside the PTO. As you can see, the grease hose has a brass fitting that comes through the housing, and the hose wraps around and supplies grease to the release bearing. Here you can see the sliding sleeve, the links and levers, and the adjusting pin and adjusting washer are visible as well. Once this is locked to the engine, the entire clutch pack will spin as an assembly. We have the hand lever attached to the PTO. The newer style hand lever will have a hexagonal casting on the end of it. When the hand lever is properly installed, this should be facing outward. This enables the operator to slide a socket and a torque wrench onto the end of the hand lever to check the engaging torque of the clutch. A lot of times you will find these installed the opposite way. Just because of not having any splines here, they're easier to install. But the correct way is to have the hex facing out. The hand lever attaches to the operating shaft, which goes through the housing, attaching to the release fork, which engages the release bearing. This is a front view of the PTO. This is the pilot stub of the main shaft. The pilot bearing will install on the end of this shaft flush. It is a tight fit on the PTO and a slip fit into the flywheel of the engine. This is a sealed for life ball bearing. It has a rubber seal to keep the grease in. Anytime the PTO is serviced, this bearing should be replaced. The clutch pack is retained with the nut and a lock washer that once the nut is torqued, the lock washer is bent over to keep it from moving. Here we have a twin disc SP211 clutch pack assembly. This is the clutch pack assembly that would be mounted onto the PTO. This is a 2-plate clutch, 11-inch diameter friction discs. These are molded friction plates. You have a hub and back plate, which is the bottom steel plate, followed by a friction plate, a steel separator plate, the second friction plate, and the floating plate. The floating plate has 3 levers that attach to the sliding sleeve and the bronze release collar. This collar travels back and forth and is what locks the clutch pack together as it currently is. Once in the PTO, the release fork will grab the 2 trunnions here and pop it back to release it, allowing the plates to spin freely in the clutch pack. The clutch pack is adjusted with the adjusting nut, which is held in place by a small pin that is spring-loaded. So when the clutch needs to be adjusted, the pin is pushed in and the adjusting nut is turned clockwise to tighten, or counterclockwise to loosen the clutch. Grease is supplied to the release bearing through a fitting and a hose which supplies grease to the bronze collar to keep it lubricated and spinning freely. The release bearing should be greased every 8 hours or once a day. This is the adjusting washer. This is what makes the adjustment on the clutch. It is held in place by the lock pin, which is spring-loaded. This pin is pushed down and the collar is turned to adjust the clutch, and it is turned clockwise to tighten, counterclockwise to loosen. The clutch is assembled with a series of pins, which are steel hardened pins, and cotter pins which hold them into place. On the SP model, there's a spring washer on either side of the lever to allow it to float in the floating plate, and it is attached via pins and cotter pins with links to the sliding sleeve assembly. The sliding sleeve assembly holds the release bearing, whether it's bronze collar or ball bearing throughout, and it is what applies the force to the links and levers to lock the clutch over center and lock it together as a unit. A little bit of a close-up view of the friction plates. These are molded friction plates in this clutch pack made out of a composite material. This clutch plate here in the SP111 is what is called a centered iron clutch plate. It is a steel center plate with steel teeth, and it has a centered steel material that is bonded to both sides of this steel center plate. Centered iron plates are typically used in higher horsepower applications and are not all that common, but are seen a lot of times in rock crushing equipment. The twin disc clutch comes with a variety of release bearings. This, being a bronze collar, is one of the styles. There's also a ball bearing release sleeve assembly and a sealed for life or limited use. You will also hear customers refer to these as throwout bearings, release bearings, sliding sleeves, and bronze collars. And that covers the twin disc SP211 clutch pack.